Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's public hearing. On behalf of my fellow board members, I want to thank you all for coming this morning. The purpose of the hearing today is to receive public comments on the proposal that the Board of Education make an application to the Illinois State Board of Education to modify provisions of Section 34-21.3 of the Illinois School Code. The proposed modification will enable the Board of Education to hire a former board member as an employee within 30 calendar days of the termination of his board membership. The proposed modification would be in effect for school years 2017 to 18 and 2018 to 19. We want to make the modification so that the Board of Education may authorize acting CEO Dr. Jackson to hire former board member Mr. Rivera as Chief Operating Officer. Before we begin public comments, I'm going to ask acting CEO Dr. Jackson to explain why it's important to hire Mr. Rivera and why she believes the interests of the district and the proposals of the state law will be met under the proposed modification. The board is scheduled to vote on this modification at our regular board meeting today. Madam Secretary, please state for the record the notice procedure for this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. President. Notice of this public hearing was posted on the cps.edu and cpsboe.org websites on January 10th, 2018. Notifications regarding this hearing were also sent to union representatives and state legislators representing Chicago on January 12, 2018. The public notice was published in the Chicago Sun-Times on January 17, 2018. And I would like to note for the record the members present here today. Member Furlong?
Present.
Vice President Guzman?
Present.
Member Ward?
Present.
And President Clark?
Here.
4 members present. We have a quorum, and I would also like to recognize Dr. Janice Jackson, our acting CEO, and Douglas Henning, our acting general counsel, and LaTanya McDade, our acting chief education officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Jackson, would you proceed?
Thank you, President Clark. I have advocated that the Board of Education seek this modification of state law from the State Board of Education because Arnie Rivera has truly a unique skill set and past work experience that make him well suited to be an excellent Chief Operating Officer for Chicago Public Schools. I can think of no one better suited for this position. Mr. Rivera has a unique combination of effective and relevant experience that are invaluable to building on our success as a school district. Mr. Rivera has experienced how the district works well and not so well from many different vantage points. It's important to note that I've known Mr. Rivera for over 10 years as a principal, and he provided high levels of support during his time as a senior budget analyst in the budget department. Mr. Rivera started his career in CPS in 2004 as a teacher at Walt Disney Magnet School, where he taught first grade for 3 years and learned the joys and challenges of being a school teacher. He moved into CPS's special education department in 2007, where he was an analyst, helping to provide and manage resources to schools to support students with disabilities. He later moved to the budget department as a senior budget analyst. He worked in a progressively more responsible way in this position. This is where I first met Arnie. As a principal, I can speak directly to his support for schools and his understanding that principals were the key levers of change for a school, and he worked to support principals to make sure they had the resources needed in order to make great choices for their children. In 2011, Mr. Rivera became the Deputy Chief of Staff to the CEO, where he represented the CEO in a number of different initiatives and was a key member of the CPS bargaining team during the 2012 negotiations with the Chicago Teachers Union. He left the district to work for the Chicago Public Education Fund in 2013 and later became the city's Deputy Chief of Staff for Education. During that time, he acted as Mayor Emanuel's liaison to educational initiatives throughout the city of Chicago, including CPS, city colleges, and the public and private universities in the city. He returned to CPS in 2015 as the Chief Policy Officer, and in that role, he was a key advisor to the administration on community engagement, legislative affairs, budget, and educational policy issues. During that time, he was again a key member of the CPS bargaining team in negotiations with the Chicago Teachers Union. Mr. Rivera moved to After School Matters 15 months ago, where he is currently its senior strategic advisor. ASM is a key partner is a key CPS partner in providing supplemental out-of-school time programming for CPS students. While at ASM, he was appointed as member of the Chicago Board of Education. As the board president can attest, Mr. Rivera was a distinctive voice in the board's decision-making process. In addition to his professional experience, Mr. Rivera has also been an active member of his local school council and is a proud and involved parent of a CPS student and supportive spouse of a CPS teacher. There are few, if any, people who have a combination of both personal and professional experience that make them better suited for this position. It is important to note that Mr. Rivera has not sought this position. He's willing to take it on because I requested that he take it on. He also does not stand to gain anything by accepting it. We have offered him the salary he is currently making. I want to note that in determining whether and how to move forward with this recommendation, the district's ethics advisor has provided guidance to the administration. Part of that guidance is a recommendation to amend the Code of Ethics in the same manner as requested by the modification. We are following and will continue to follow that in any future guidance. In summary, I will be asking the board to make an application for a school code modification because Mr. Rivera will be a great addition to my administration, and there is no practical reason that his former board membership should be an obstacle to him joining my team. Thank you, President Clark and fellow board members, for your consideration of this application.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jackson. Madam Secretary, please state for the record the notice procedure for this hearing.
Thank you. I'll proceed. This is for the public comment, Mr. President, and for the record, I would like to note that the registration for the public hearing was held between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 8 a.m. this morning. Individuals who register to speak will have the 2 minutes to comment, and I will call speakers in order of registration. Written comments regarding the modification application may be submitted to the board office by 5 p.m. today. This hearing will conclude after the last person who has signed in to speak or has spoken, or at about 9:05 a.m. We'll adjust the time, given that we started at 8:35 a.m., whichever occurs first. When called, please state your name. And, Mr. President, I will proceed by calling the first speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 1 will be Serena Peterson-Closa, followed by speaker number 2, Anna Pavich, and then speaker number 3, Jeff Jenkins. Please proceed.
Good morning. My name is Serena Peterson-Closa, and I have the honor of being the principal of Ebinger Elementary School. I began teaching for Chicago Public Schools in 1991, and I can honestly say that today I have never felt more positive about the future of the system. I credit my positive feeling to the new leadership that is on our horizon. Appointing Dr. Janice Jackson as our CEO has given school-based leaders so much hope and has reinvigorated us to work even harder and smarter each day. When I learned that Dr. Jackson was recommending the appointment of Arnie Rivera as COO, all I could think of was, now we have our dream team. My experience with Arnie has always been extremely positive. Being a principal can be a bit isolating. When you need assistance and need answers, it's important to have a person at central office who will listen and be responsive. During Mr. Rivera's tenure in the IGA department, he was always extremely responsive to any and all of my issues. He would return phone calls immediately and always lead me in the right direction. I believe what makes him so highly effective is that he continues to think like an educator. Not all people who are teachers are able to do this. Mr. Rivera puts children first in his decision-making. Being a public servant for CPS isn't a job for him. It's who he is. It's part of his DNA. He is a man with the utmost integrity, honesty, loyalty, and he also has a great sense of humor. And I think that's important when working with people. I, like many of my colleagues, fully endorse the appointment of Mr. Arnie Rivera for COO. Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Ms.
much.
Closa.
Also, thank you for staying within your 2 minutes.
Our next speaker, please. Anna Pavich.
Good morning. My name is Anna Pavich, and I'm the principal of Amundsen High School, which progressed from probation to level 1+ status in only 5 years. Thank you. Give me extra time. People often ask me what leadership strategies have led to our successful transition, and I always give two answers. The first is stable leadership. The same administrative team has been in place for 6 years, and from one year to the next, builds upon the foundation of work begun. I'm gratified to be here today, knowing that this is the body that will select our next CEO, which I hope is Dr. Janice Jackson. Dr. Jackson brings the continuity of leadership that we so desperately need. Dr. Jackson's fingerprints are all over the instructional work and leadership development strategies that have been so important to CPS's success. I am confident and excited about Dr. Jackson's candidacy because of her commitment to the education and well-being of Chicago's children. Dr. Jackson's roots in this district run very deep. She has played an integral role in leading us through our transformation from CPS schools being called the worst in the nation to becoming a district lauded for the fact that its students appear to be learning faster than almost every other school system in the country. I am encouraged that Dr. Jackson has seized the opportunity to staff individuals in positions that are aligned to their competence and skills. Case in point, Arnaldo Rivera. So to my second leadership strategy, I never make decisions based by logistical considerations or constraints. Every decision I make is based on what's good for kids. Today, this board is faced with a similar decision, albeit one related to policy. To that end, I enthusiastically encourage the board to take all necessary steps to ensure that Mr. Rivera is approved as CEO at the earliest available opportunity. This decision is good for kids. I believe that he has the knowledge and experience to fulfill the responsibilities of CEO in a way that no one has in my almost 22 years of experience in this district. Mr. Rivera has proven that he is an educational leader who is capable of making financial decisions
Ms. Pavich.
and operational decisions that are driven by educational need. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. President, if I may, before Mr. Jeff Jenkins comes up to the podium, I believe Alderman O'Shea from the 19th Ward would like to address the board.
Good morning. Thank you. Unlike most politicians, I'll be brief. I got to tell you, it's a relief to be here today because oftentimes when I'm before this body, we haven't been on the same page. I've been in this, not in this room, but the former boardroom, oftentimes with the challenge, with an issue. But I've got to tell you, in my nearly 7 years serving the residents of the 19th Ward, working to benefit the 12 CPS schools in my community, I've had always someone that you could talk to in his various roles, a former educator, someone that gets it, someone when he tells you what he's going to try to do, he's going to live up to that, and that's Arnold Rivera. I think it's important moving forward. This new administration has strong, honest, dedicated leaders working to continue to make our schools better. And Arnie Rivera would be an important part of that team. I look forward to working with him, and I would hope that as quickly as possible we can get him in place and begin moving forward, because I'm really excited to be working with you too, Dr. Jackson. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you, Alderman. And next, please, Mr. Jeff Jenkins, speaker number 3, followed by speaker number 4, Rachel Reznick, and then speaker number 5, Kurt Jones.
I'm not at the mic, so please don't officially start my time yet. I just want to thank my principal in my community, Anna Pavich, for transforming Amundsen from a
Mr. Jenkins, excuse me, can you please proceed?
to a
Sorry.
level 1 destination
Thank
high
you.
school in my community. Do what you can to keep her. With that, I honorably disagree with Anna on this particular matter. I am a democratically elected member of the local school council at John C. Coonley Elementary and a proud public school parent, just like you, Ms. Jackson. Thank you. I've been waiting a long time to say that, a CEO who believes in public schools. That said, I don't believe that we should change these rules just because we don't like them. I think it sets a bad tone and a bad tenor. I think Mr. Rivera is unquestionably qualified to hold that position. However, I tell my kids and my teachers and my administrators we have to follow the rules, and I think that would set a great tone, not only at CPS, but citywide. We follow the rules here. A year from now, I would love to see Mr. Rivera in that position. I also think it's a very pessimistic view of CPS in our city and state when you say we have a very shallow bench. We can only work from the same few people over and over again. I would encourage you to expand the process, invite some new faces and some new folks in. Thank you.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Jenkins. Our next speaker, please, Rachel Reznick.
Good morning, Board President Clark, board members, CPS staff, and members of the audience. My name is Rachel Garza Reznick, and I had the privilege of working for the children of Chicago, for the Chicago Public Schools for 33 years as a teacher, an elementary school principal, deputy budget director, deputy chief officer for the Department of Early Childhood, and labor relations officer from 2005 until my retirement in June of 2012. I am here to voice my support for Dr. Jackson's cabinet positions, for Latanya McDade, Heather Wendell, Pedro Soto, and certainly Arnaldo Rivera. I have had the privilege of working with all those four individuals in their various capacities here at CPS. I want to speak specifically about Arnie. I met Arnie during his early tenure in the Office of Management and Budget, and I found myself working closely with him in preparing for contract negotiations in 2007, and afterwards assisting with a cross-departmental implementation of the oftentimes painstaking and complicating contractual changes for the 7 unions who represent CPS employees. Throughout, whether as the budget director, deputy chief of staff, or in his other roles, Arnie has always been committed to educating our students by providing greater school autonomy, supporting our school administrators and educators, and being an advocate for children and youth in some very difficult conversations. Arnie has led by always listening, taking time to consider all options, and engaging others in honest discourse. I have seen Arnie mentor and support subordinates and do what unfortunately is rare. I have heard him publicly acknowledge their contributions to his own superiors. I have heard Arnie respectfully present a difference of opinion with colleagues and superiors, and on many occasions, I personally
Ms.
received
Reznick?
his good counsel. Fundamentally, I believe he has always been guided through his experiences as a first-grade teacher. I believe Arnie sees his work through that lens, doing what is correct for the children within the financial parameters challenging the district. He will excel as a COO. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Reznick. And our next speaker, please, Kurt D. Jones, followed by speaker number 6, Chad Adams, and then speaker number 7, Adrienne Sharenzel Curry.
Good morning, President Clark.
Good morning.
Good morning, Member Ward. I brought letters because 2 minutes could be a stretch for me. Shut up, McDade. I like to talk. Dear President Clark and respected members of the Chicago Board of Education, I stand before you as the proud principal of Franklin Fine Arts Center and Libby Elementary and Middle School in my former life. Proud dad of a 6th grader going on 40 and an 18-year CPS employee, proud CPS employee, even during some tough times. I stand before you confident, excited, and optimistic. Today, you will see what I know, the importance of this decision to grant Mr. Arnie Rivera the opportunity to serve with Dr. Jackson on our new CPS leadership team by granting a modification. The announcement of the leadership, including Mr. Rivera, has truly encouraged so many of us in the field that it simply could be unprecedented. Under the leadership announced by our new CEO, Dr. Janice Jackson, how high we will take children academically in CPS. Truly life-changing. I'm confident in Mr. Rivera's abilities from working with him in various capacities over 12 years as a principal. In 2007, I met Arnie in the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, at Old 125 South Clark Street. Myself, a scared amateur and soaked behind the ears 32-year-old new principal, and Arnie in charge of my budget, begging, which he professionally turned into a conversation with solutions. I recall having to struggle right off the bat with budget, as I had the honor to be the principal of the most mobile school in the district at the time. My budget relied on mobility positions, which were typically granted in the budgeting office. An old practice, that timer is killing me. Arnie and I were able to work together, put my math degree to use, and strategically fix the gap in the budget for my children and work through solutions. It was a true catalyst to our success at Libby, going from a top 10 worst school in the system to a level 1 in Inglewood in 9 years later. It was Arnie's ability to analyze, problem solve, collaborate, and continue to improve the system for a neighborhood school like mine. Through that and many other examples over 11 years, I learned from, with, and grew as a principal by collaborating with Arnie, the guy who originally slashed my budget. It is hard to contain the excitement that I have being led along this journey by a team of seasoned, experienced educators with proven success, and probably more than excited.
Mr. Jones?
Ecstatic would be more appropriate. I leave you the letters because I'm out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And our next speaker, please, Chad Adams.
Good morning, the members of the board. My name's Chad Adams. I'm the principal of Sullivan High School in Rogers Park, where we believe in family, integrity, service, and tenacity. FIST. And I stand here today as a principal, but also as a former CTU member and nationally board certified teacher, also as a CPS parent. And I can't begin to explain how excited I am about Dr. Jackson's leadership. She's assembling a team. LaTanya sitting here, I just can't express how excited I am for the first time. I've been in this district since 2002, and it's just exciting time for us as principals that we are going to have leadership that understands children and cares about children. With the appointment of Arnie Rivera, I think the dream team, as was spoken earlier, is being assembled. When I took over Sullivan, there were 4 principals in 4 years, 13 years of academic probation. We've hit level 2+, and we're not quite level 1 yet, Anna, but I'm going to catch you. And the stabilization of leadership is so important, and across the district, to principalships, to organizations all across the city. So I'm here to support Arnie and his appointment to this team, because these 3 people I mentioned today are listeners, and it's one of the values I pride myself on is listening. And every time I've called, texted them, spoke to them, I know that they're listening, and they're listening because they have something that I believe in, kids in their heart. And if you have kids in your heart, you're going to make the right decisions, and it doesn't matter if we have to sometimes stretch the boundaries a little bit and move the boundaries so we can get the right people in the right spots. So thank you for listening. I think that they could be a Sullivan member because they also believe in family, integrity, service, and tenacity. And I hope that you'll give Dr. Jackson what she deserves as a leader and allow her to have her team together. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. And our next speaker, please.
Good morning, board members, Dr. Jackson and CPS staff. My name is Dr. Adrienne Jackson, and I am here with Melissa Mister, one of my colleagues. I'll be speaking on behalf of both of us. We both work for After School Matters as the Chief Program Officer and as the Senior Program Director. Both of us have known Arnie Rivera for over 10 years. I met him when I was working for the Chicago Public Schools in Central Office, and Melissa as the founding principal for South Shore Fine Arts Academy. We found Arnie to be solution-oriented, committed to process improvement, and always working through a lens of what is important and good for children. When After School Matters had a vacancy in the CFO position, I immediately spoke with our CEO and recruited Arnie Rivera for this role. We refer to Arnie as a little bit of a unicorn because of his rare mixture of strong leadership, holistic understanding of how operations can support programs or education, and have always found him to be a strategic thinker. During his tenure at After School Matters, he successfully oversaw a critical capital project for our new building in the Belmont-Cragen community. Similar to ourselves, Arnie works for youth. His work with youth and for the Chicago Public Schools has been very personal to him. Both Arnie and I both have spouses who work at neighborhood schools, and Melissa, Arnie, and myself all have children that attend Chicago Public Schools. He will be sadly missed at After School Matters, but we cannot think of a better person for this key role who will be a strong support to Chief Executive Officer Dr. Jackson, Chief Education Officer McDade, and will be making decisions for our children. We strongly encourage both of you and ISB to approve this modification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. And our next speakers, Mr. President, will be speaker number 8, Cameron So, followed by speaker 9, Dennis Gregory, please.
Hello. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board. I just wanted to make a few brief points about technology in Chicago Public Schools.
Excuse me, sir. This comment is just for the modification of the school code. Do you have anything in writing that you could submit?
Germane and within the bounds of what's allowed in the rules for the board.
Please proceed.
Okay. So this summer I led the Citizen Science Ambassador Program at Adler Planetarium, co-sponsored by After School Matters, and one of the topics was digital literacy. There's a broader conversation going on about the role of technology in our lives, and I just want to urge the board to take a closer look at how the user interface of major technological systems might be influencing teachers and students, and the role that these systems might play in a broader look at what students are learning and how they're learning. Thanks.
Did you say you work for Adler? I missed that part.
I was the instructor this summer at Adler Planetarium for the Citizen Science Ambassador Program.
It's a great organization. That's what when you mentioned Adler, I've had a lot of affiliation with them over the years. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, please, Dennis Gregory, followed by speaker number 10, Adrienne Segura.
Good morning, President Clark, members of the board, Dr. Jackson. First, my son was in that program and he did quite well, so just as a point of reference. My name is Dennis Gregory. I have 2 children in CPS. I currently serve on the Disney 2 Local School Council and previously served on the O.A. Thorpe LSC as well as the Schurz LSC. First, I would like to thank the mayor for his appointment of Dr. Jackson as our interim CEO. Having someone with her experience, in particular the fact that she's a graduate of CPS, worked in the system as a teacher, principal, and administrator, and chose to send her daughter to a CPS school, all bode well for our district. As one of her first acts, she has selected Arnie Rivera to serve as CEO of the district, and I can't think of anyone better prepared for this job. I've known Arnie, like many in this room, for about 10 years. I have served with him on the Disney 2 Local School Council, and I've drawn on his experience and expertise many times in my efforts to improve our schools. His knowledge and understanding is unmatched, and his passion for improving our schools is contagious. Arnie, too, taught as a first-grade teacher in the district, worked in the budget office, led the budget office, was in leadership in 2 nonprofits dedicated to in support of our schools, and has served on this board. One point I also like to make it that Arnie and his wife have also chosen CPS as a school for their daughter. Well, I understand there's much debate regarding the fact that many CPS leaders have chosen private schools for their children, and I respect that as a personal decision. I believe that when we have leaders in our school that choose CPS as a choice for their children, we are stronger. Therefore, I strongly support the district in moving forward to achieve this waiver and to allow Arnie to assume the position of CEO as soon as possible. To do otherwise would be a loss for our district. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. And our next speaker, Adrienne Segura.
Good morning, Ms. Clark, members of the board, Dr. Jackson. I'll be brief. I think everyone's already spoken about Arnie's experiences and why he's a qualified candidate. As a product of CPS myself, I think that the hope that this dream team that's being assembled gives to our kids to see people who reflect their backgrounds is more important than any of the other qualifications. You know, to see people of color rising in the ranks. I have my wife and I. We have a 7-month-old daughter, and the fact that if there's continuity with this team, to be able to point and show her what she can become is really exciting for me. So I'm thrilled. I completely back Arnie and the decision being made, and just really excited to see what the year brings. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Segura. Mr. President, if I may just finish the speakers list. We are at the 9:05 mark. There are 4 additional speakers. Thank you. Our next speakers then will be speaker number 11, please, Deb Haas, followed by speaker number 12, Jesse Sharkey.
I'm Deb Haas, parent and Raise Your Hand board member. Raise Your Hand has no issues with Arnie Rivera as an individual. In my limited interactions with him, he has seemed honest and genuinely willing to listen and to learn. But asking to maneuver around the law and ethics policies to hire Mr. Rivera as Chief Operating Officer, despite the fact that only days ago he was your fellow board member, invites concern about possible conflict of interest. Today's situation might be easier if you'd worried more about the public trust when you proclaimed the need for quick decisions in the past. Examples abound. The board's willingness to approve the large no-bid contracts that enabled Barbara Bird Bennett to retain her Soup's friends. Claypool's avoidance of a waiver request to hire his friend Marmer. Hiring crony consultants and paying them $14 million to cut special education. Multiple other vendor clout contracts. Just last month, you bent the rules to give the Reverend John Hanna special time to speak at the board meeting before you approved his AIM New Life Charter School. Then you delayed the meeting again to heap praise on Hanna in the middle of public comments. Dr. Hines, whose son will be involved in Hanna's school, said without compunction that she'd vote yes for it with 2 hands if she could, in flagrant violation of recusal policies. That was to open a new school that will cost almost $41 million over the next 5 years when CPS is losing enrollment and most schools lack the librarians, social workers, nurses, and arts learning opportunities along with special education services they need. No wonder we can't trust you. I bet the families of NTA wish they were your trusted friends right now, or the Englewood students, about 80 of whom are homeless, whose school CPS plans to strip away. We all wish you released facilities data on time and with accuracy as school communities wait with dread to see where your axe will land next. Instead, many schools seem to have spread in new rooms or had them disappear since 2015. We're not saying don't hire Mr. Rivera specifically. We're saying appointed boards fail at providing the transparent, accountable government we deserve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hassan. Our next speaker, Jesse Sharkey, followed by Duane Trust, and then the last speaker, Speaker 14, Carolyn Velikiy, please.
Good morning. I'm Jesse Sharkey, Vice President of the CTU. In the past, the CTU has taken this board, shall we say, taken you to task in a number of ways for a variety of things, and we see that as a role, and honestly, sometimes I relish it. And I don't relish this. I'm not going to get pleasure out of this, because I've worked with Arnie Rivera, and personally, I found him to be engaged, bright. The things that people have said about him are true. I believe he cares about public schools in the city of Chicago. In negotiations, he was personally involved, and I found him helpful, which is more than I can say about your CEO at the time. However, he's a member of your board, and you don't hire a member of your own board directly after he's been a member of your board. It's an ethical. This is not an ethical check on him. It's an ethical check on you. As the board, there's a new administration, and that administration needs to draw a clear line to the break with the unethical practices of the past. Frankly, the mayor's first CEO was forced out after we lost the public's trust in the wake of the first teacher strike in 25 years. The second CEO was jailed in a multi-million-dollar kickback scheme, and the third CEO was forced out in an ethics scandal and subsequent cover-up. 3 strikes and you're out on this one. New CEO, new practices. There needs to be a clear, bright line that you draw there. It's not about Arnie. It's about the reliability and credibility of the institution of Chicago Public Schools in the eyes of the public after what's frankly been a tough run for you guys. I very much want Chicago Public Schools to succeed. I want you guys to be, I think we all benefit if the public schools are viewed positively in the city of Chicago. That's something we long for. Frankly, I think Dr. Janice Jackson has been a good pick. But on this one, I think you got to wait before you can hire the guy. That's what the ethics rule says, and we're against situational ethics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharkey.
Thank you,
And
Jesse, for your insights.
our next speaker, please, Duane Trust.
Good morning, member of the board. My name is Duane Trust. I'm coming here speaking as a resident of the Austin community, not here to represent any organizations. I first want to say that this is also not an endorsement of the process, but if it's going to happen, you have picked a person we think that's going to be a strong asset to our community and our children, and Arnie Rivera. But first, before I continue with my comments, is there a statute of limitations on kidnapping, enforceable, whatever people? No. So in that regards, we first met Ernie, my wife and I, he came out to a longer school day hearing at 15th and Holman. And, we ended the hearing at about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and he was willing to travel on public transportation, which I wasn't willing to do at 15th and Holman. And so we forcibly made him get into our car and said, no, we'll take you on downtown. But at that time, we struck up some very good conversations, which have continued to this day, that we know that again, no matter how we or I may feel about some of the board policies, we've found that Mr. Rivera has always had an open ear and an open heart to our community, and the issues that we've had personally in our community, he's been able to work with us. And that's really kind of important, when we have these different challenges in our community, somebody who will work with you regardless of the constraints and the boundaries in which they have to operate in. So if you're going to do this and it's going to happen, you cannot pick the better person to go ahead and sit in that position. And informally, in a sense, you've probably heard on the West Side that we're trying to get together with this West Side Education Summit. So informally, I want to extend a hand out to Dr. Jackson. Hopefully your office and CPS could be a part of that in terms of having these ongoing discussions about education policies and the impact on the West Side schools. And I'm not sure if you received the resolution from the Austin CAC that my wife wholeheartedly endorsed in terms of your appointment to CEO. We haven't gotten to it yet. It's on its way. So we want to say, I can only say informally that that's what the Austin CAC voted upon. And thank you for this opportunity. And I got it done in 2
Thank you, Mr.
minutes.
Trust.
Thank you.
And our last speaker, Mr. President, is Carolyn Velikiy, please.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Velikiy, and I had the pleasure of serving with Mr. Rivera on the Disney 2 local school council for a few years while his wife was a teacher there. This attempt to subvert the law and violate the ethics protections put in place is wrong, and you know it.
Well,
Thank you, Ms.
very much.
Velikiy. Mr. President, this concludes the public segment.
Board members, you've heard all the public comments. Do you have any questions or comments?
No, I'd just say, I had a chance to get to know Arnie on the board. I didn't know him before then. And, even those that are against changing the policy haven't been able to come up with any reason for Arnie personally, meaning he has the strong ethics and respect to the community. And that I would have expected nothing less. The second thing I'd say is, if this entire day is going to be about the love for Janice, we're going to need to extend the meeting a lot later into the night. Because if everybody wants to say they love Janice, it's a long day ahead of us.
Okay. This concludes our modification request hearing. Our regular board meeting will convene at 10:30. We're also having a Finance and Audit Committee meeting at 9:30. Thank you very much.